My friends know that everyone in my space has done a Brush Only OSL video, and here's mine. Today we continue our epic quest to paint all of the Mythic Battles Ragnarok miniatures, and this one is Utgarda Loki. It's clear he has got a flame source in his hand, and the challenge was to paint that with Brush Only. I got really stuck, so I sought out the help of David Powell. He's a master level instructor in my area. He's awesome. So let us sit down and relax and enjoy how he coaches me on Brush Only OSL. Enjoy! Our current painting challenge, which I'm trying to complete the Mythic Battles Ragnarok miniature set, which is a huge Kickstarter. And like a lot of us, we got into huge Kickstarters. We're sitting on piles of unpainted miniatures, and I am trying to dig through mine. I want to get through this pile. Here is my next challenge. This is Utgarda Loki. And he was obviously sculpted, really obviously, blatantly sculpted to be a challenge to paint OSL, Object Source Lighting. Our character is holding up a flame. It's real obvious where the light is coming from. How do we begin, my friend? What is my battle strategy to tackle this guy?
Yeah, so I think today we can go through probably maybe 5 or 6 different sort of keys to how to paint OSL. And the first one you've already covered. And so the first key is good preparation and making some early choices to help you set yourself up for success. And so one of the ones that you kind of done here is you've used some white for your main light, but the rest of it is not white everywhere. You're using more gray and darker tones elsewhere. And if you think about, if I had my phone here and in front of me, if I'm in a dark car, it's going to light my face up.
Yes.
If I do it right here in this room that's well lit, it's still going to light my face up, but you're not going to notice it. You're not going to see it. So if the whole model is very, very bright, it's going to be really hard for that OSL to shine through. And so by kind of taking a more muted, darker approach to the rest of the figure, gives you a lot more room to work and have that bright OSL in there and not be fighting against the rest of the figure. Okay, so kind of just my general approach would be for this piece is to start, I'll grab onto it for a sec. So I guess, so the first sort of thing I want to try and do is just place where is the light. So, you've hit it with a spray primer, but it's, we're not, it's a general direction. It's not necessarily precisely where the light would hit. So we're going to make some
approximation.
Right. So it's a good start. But so now I would say the first thing to do is to go back in, and now we're going to paint. So we're going to do like a firelight. I might take like a dull red or something. And the goal is to try and figure out where is that light hitting, and any place that light would hit, we're going to put some dull red there.
Okay.
And then the next step would then be, okay, now I know where the lights hit. Now let's work on the intensity. And so take that same, so the reds on the arm, on the horn over, now how bright should that be? So kind of first thing is just placement, and then we'll start to fine tune with the brightness.
Terrific. I might imagine that as we get farther away from the light, we'll be more of an orange, and we were closer to it'll be more of a yellow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So kind of more of like, and we probably won't use much yellow on the figure itself, more like orange to kind of dull red, but kind of working towards that yellow.
So we limit the yellow to the flame itself.
So one of the tips that I like to use with OSL for light, so you have the light sources on the figure itself, is to try and take the figure and look as though you are the light source.
Yes.
So, for this guy, I got this glowing orb underneath him. And so I'm going to kind of hold it and kind of look almost like through the orb at the figure. And whatever I can see is what's going to be hit by the light.
Yeah.
And so, for this guy, the nice thing is it's over here with the sun. So there's not a lot of different directions. It's not like right near him or right like in the center mass where it's going to go in all different directions. But you can think about, so if I'm looking at him from here, kind of looking at that light, but if I want to paint, say, these fingers, I can't look, the light's coming the other direction. So I need to turn around and say, the back of this hand is going to all be black because the light's not really hitting it. Same thing of like underneath this orb is all going to be black.
Wow.
So kind of,
pretty good actual black too.
Right. Because there's really,
because how can you see something if the light is right behind it?
Right.
He's holding something that's on fire. Yeah. That hand is the opposite of the hand is going to be black.
Yeah. And so this is really just going to be try to get to all the places where the light is hitting. And once we see that, then we can kind of say, okay, here's here's the farthest point, and that's going to remain this dull red. And as I get closer and closer and closer, I can start increasing the intensity, but I kind of get some sense of what my range is. And that'll help me, because like if I put just a bright orange on there, is it too bright? Is it too dark? Until I sort of see the bigger picture, it's hard for me to know how intense I want that to be.
Gotcha.
And this is not meant to be a really precise, tedious kind of step. This is kind of like we're just trying to throw some color on there and get a sense of where should the light be hitting. So it's not something that I want you to spend, hours on, spend a little bit of time thinking about where the light will hit, but don't worry about the application of the paint too much. We're going to go back and refine things.
So can I think, for example, rough light map is what I'm sure.
Right. Yeah.
Rough light map.
Yeah. Okay. And one thing I'm doing on here right now, and you can do it on yours as well, is so on the base here, so that light's going to be kind of going across the base. And so you have all these texture on him. I'm almost going to kind of dry brush and drag my brush away from the light source and kind of let me pick up, it'll hit those little edges on the base. Mm-hmm. But by doing it kind of away from the light, like the brush is the ray of light, and I'm kind of tracing it away. So as you could be trying to get those little, like over here on his shoulder, the kind of dry brush, and just kind of drag it away from the light. Just good. It'll hit the raised edges facing light, and kind of just give you that sense of here's where it's picking up as it goes.
It's been my observation that you don't use dry brushing much at all, do you?
Not a great deal, but there's times when it's still on fur, on chainmail, like it's still relevant. It's still it's not my main highlight technique, but there are times when it's still useful just to kind of hit those edges for a little oomph.
Good to know. I thought you held dry brushing in disdain, and I was making great efforts to avoid it whenever possible. Just want to take a quick shout out for our friends at KublaCon Game Convention. KublaCon is the greatest game convention in all of Northern California, hosting incredible events for role players, board gamers, and miniature gamers of all stripes. They feature tons of painting events and classes where you too can learn from masters like David Powell. There's also tons of pop-up events, prizes, and surprises, and a huge 40K tournament. Check out KublaCon in Burlingame, California, end of May. Links in the description. And that's right, you can get coached by David Powell, the master artist who's coaching me right now at KublaCon, so get on it. You can also find David at Adepticon in Chicago and Nova Open on the East Coast. And now back to David as he explains the third key tip in our tutorial.
Probably our fall-off point for, that's kind of the dullest light we're going to see.
I would imagine.
And then as we now go closer, we can start building up that intensity.
Yeah. This hand is completely shaded.
Yeah. So now we could take that darker color and come in and darken up this area, darken under there, and sort of the areas that we don't think are getting hit by light, we can darken those up to help with that difference between lit and unlit. And yeah, as I said, like we're sketching in our light. We're not going to be 100% perfect. No one is. And so now even I can come back in there and say, okay, you know what, maybe it got a little too far over on the side of here or there. And so I'm going to kind of clamp some of those edges, some of those areas where the light really shouldn't be hitting, and use this as my shadow to differentiate that.
Yeah, this Payne's Ray is making a nice shadow color of the dark red here.
Yeah, it's a nice, that cold contrast to the warm light. And this stage of the process, I will have both my colors. So I've got my dull red and my Payne's Gray. And so as I'm going, I'm going to make some corrections with the Payne's Gray, darken up areas that I want. And if I see, this little area here should get some more red or things. As I see things, I might still jump back and forth, and sort of I'm just refining that sketch now.
That's cool because we're only dealing with two colors. That's manageable.
Yeah. Yep.
I can wrap my head around that.
Yeah. And so for example, like right where you are now, like you can be bolder with like the Payne's Gray, kind of just cover the hand up, and then come back in, let it dry for a sec, and then come back in with your red, and then you can just kind of hit the top edge of that finger, the top edge of this finger. Like there's going to be a little touches of light there, but it's going to be mostly dark. So hit it with, you don't have to be nearly as precise, just kind of cover it up with the gray, and then come back in a little bit of red, just kind of get those pins, those little tiny hits of light in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm enjoying the process. This is fun. I can see, everyone wants to see like instant gratification, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get that with miniature painting,
Right?
But you can see, if you're making progress and it's going well, you know it.
Yeah.
And the fun starts to kick in. So one thing I'm taking away from this already is we're just really working with two colors here.
Right.
A warm red to communicate where the flame is hitting directly, and then the magical shade sauce, which is paper gray. And just dealing with those two colors to get things going, I like.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people in my space, at my skill level, we get frozen brush. We look at a model, we just freeze up. We don't know how to start. We don't know how to really start getting colors down. And, it's almost like walking out onto a tightrope for the first time.
Right. And I mean, OSL especially is a more difficult subject. It was like technique, but it's a difficult subject because you're lighting from different directions, different locations. And you think about zenithal lighting and zenithal lighting on a face, and you might say, oh, okay, I know it's going to hit the forehead, it's going to hit the nose, it's going to hit the cheek. You already have a general feel for where zenithal light should hit because you painted zenithal lighting a lot. But now, this is not zenithal lighting, it's different directions. And so it's not something that's necessarily going to be super intuitive. And so it's good to sort of take that early sketch and, not spend a lot of time on things, just get the colors on the piece and then say, does this make sense? Does it look right? If it doesn't, we take a step back. Why? What's missing? What's in the wrong place? Make your adjustments, when you still only spent time with two colors. Again, a little bit of imagination because we're not done. But you get kind of the sense of that there is some light coming from this object.
Yeah. I'm starting to get that here.
Yeah. And it's just two colors.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything. It's not a rocket science yet.
Yeah, that's one of the big takeaways of this process is we're starting simple, just two colors. We went from black and white to now we're going to basically a dark red and a really dark red.
So we discussed kind of the first two keys to OSL. So one was preparation, kind of picking your lighting conditions, picking primers, kind of give you a good place to start with. So it's overall dim, let that bright light shine. Next step here, which we just finished now, is that light sketch, trying to get light in the right spot, know where it's hitting, where it's not hitting. Now, the next one is going to be looking at the intensity. And so obviously, when you're looking at zenithal lighting, light from off scene, it's going to be pretty uniform throughout the figure. But when the light is right there in his hand, literally in his hand, you're going to see an intensity difference between what's really close to the light source and what's farther away. You're going to have that fall off. This is going to give you that more, trying to convey the realism of the light. This is actually our light source. So now that we kind of know roughly where that light wants to be, now we're going to say, okay, let's work with new colors. Again, for a firelight, the fire might be yellow, but most of what we're going to have on the figure is going to be in that red to orange range.
Yes. Aha, I'm getting some progress there. Yeah. We can see a little more refinement.
Yeah. I kind of said, again, I haven't gone to my last color yet. I'm just done kind of the dark dull red and the orange, and already you kind of can see it's reading as a glow because you at least have some intensity difference in there.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I like about this technique is if you go a little bit too hard with the bright, you can darken it down. If you go a little bit too dark, you can still brighten it up because these war paint fanatics are in good coverage.
Yeah.
So, and since we're using paints that are pretty well thinned, there's a lot of control here. So yeah, I'm really comfortable with this process.
Yeah. And don't, people, I think sometimes get too focused on being right the first time.
Yeah.
It's not, it's we have erasers for a reason. You just paint back over it. It's not, don't worry about being perfect. It's about getting some things on there, taking a look and saying, oh, this works, this doesn't work. And then you make your fixes. There's no artist who just does it one layer and they're done.
You touched on a very good point. You touched on a very good point there, David. One of the ingredients of this freeze, this paint lock, brush lock that we experience is that, we think we have to get it right the first time when we apply paint, that it's got to be right. No, it doesn't. It just has to be rough, and then you refine as you go.
For all these things, it's, don't go too fast. Sort of say, okay, I've put a nice color on there. Let me take a break. Let me put it down. This would be my tabletop piece. So let me hold it arm's length away from me. How is that reading? What works? What doesn't work? And okay, if I'm pretty happy with things, now I can go to the next color and lay, just sort of, but every so often, just take a little step back, evaluate, and then carry on. Don't get too locked into where you just sort of plow ahead and ignore maybe what's happened.
I think that's a great tip because you want to see the forest through the trees. Don't get locked into, this close-up view. You start to just sort of lose your way. So just back up a little bit, and then you can sort of reground yourself.
Right.
Get back on path.
Yeah. And
looking pretty smooth, isn't it?
We're going to play around with, a lot of it is trying to control the paint. And so what I want is, so a couple of things. So on the palette, I can pull from the middle where it's more opaque, or from the side where it's more transparent.
Yeah.
And then I also want to make sure how much paint is on the brush. So my thumb is kind of my a little bit like, I want to paint a small area.
Mine too.
Yeah. So this is sort of my way to either test the paint or unload the paint. I've got too much on there maybe, or I want to have a little more. I want to be able to push the paint around once it's on the figure without flooding it.
Okay, my friends, that was a lot of killer info from Grandmaster artist David Powell about how to paint OSL. So let's review his 5 key takeaway points on how to do this. Number 1, you got to have good preparation. Do that zenithal from the direction of your light source. Anything that the light is hitting should be white. Anything that is away and shaded from the light should be dark, if not black. And the shades and light shadows in between should be gray. Good preparation will set you up for success. Now, moving on. The next is choose your colors. The magic is Payne's gray. Tip number 3, magic of Payne's gray. Comes in a paint form, comes in an ink form, both very powerful. It's like the right arm of shading. So remember, get some Payne's gray. The next tip is use plenty of water and load your brush intelligently. And what that means is you don't want to overload your brush. You want to have just the right amount of water and pigment in there, and you want to use that paper towel and bleed it off, and then finally use your thumb to do the final unloading and testing of your paint before you move on. That brings us to our final tip, which is take a look back. Take a step back and get that arm's length view. That gives you the best sense of where to make your corrections. And using thin paint is really easy to paint over what you've done. So you start rough and you refine until you're happy with what your end result is. And that's our episode. If you like what I do, then you know what to do. And I hope to see you at KublaCon. Till then, take care.